Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today here on Point of View. We're going to be talking about a lot of issues in this first hour, kind of an open line. A lot of them start with the letter I: impeachment, immigration, and we'll get into some others in just a few minutes. Matter of fact, when we get over to Israel, it'll be intifada. So this is sort of the I hour, and we will do our best to try to cover lots of issues. Let me start out with impeachment, because it has been in the news. We'll cover it, and perhaps you have some comments about that. But you may have heard that yesterday, former vice presidential candidate and former governor of the state of Alaska, Sarah Palin, actually put out an op-ed piece arguing that it is time to impeach the president. Her argument was that this influx of all of these children, illegal immigrants, over the southern border, she said, quote, is the last straw that makes the battered wife say no mas. So she has been arguing that it is time to impeach the president. Today we heard from John Boehner, Speaker of the House, said, I disagree when asked by the reporters about this issue, and simply went on to make comments that you don't bring a lawsuit to a gunfight, she said. There's no place for lawyers on the front line. So he had kind of a counterpoint on that issue. And I think the one that a lot of people have been talking about, and we'll see if we can get him on the program, although he's been on so many programs now you probably have heard him, that is Pat Buchanan, good friend of this ministry. He's been on the program with us many times before. He was on lots of programs yesterday. He's going to be on some more today and tomorrow. But he wrote a piece called Impeachment, A Bridge Too Far. Now, for those of you, by the way, that are not students of World War II, that phrase, a bridge too far, comes from a time in which the Allied forces were trying to take a number of bridges and concluded that that furthest bridge was a bridge too far. Anyway, that's an illustration of this is a little bit too much. Pat Buchanan, if I can quote from him for just a minute, says, increasingly across the city, the I word is being heard. Impeachment is being brought up by Republicans outraged over Barack Obama's usurpation of power and unilateral rewriting of the laws. And Obama is taunting John Boehner and the GOP, so sue me. Democrats are talking impeachment to rally their lethargic base to come out and vote this fall to prevent Republicans from taking control of the Senate and with the power to convict an impeached president. Still, Republicans should drop the talk of impeachment, says Pat Buchanan. For the GOP would gain nothing and risk everything if people began to take seriously their threats to do to Barack Obama what Newt Gingrich's House did to Bill Clinton. The charges for which a president can be impeached and removed from office are treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. With Bill Clinton, the impeachers had a solid case of perjury. With Richard Nixon, they had a preponderance of evidence that at least for a time he had sought to obstruct justice in the investigation of the Watergate break-in. Article 2 of the impeachment of Richard Nixon was for the misuse of the IRS in what turned out to be futile and failed attempts to have the agency harass political enemies by having them audited. And yet there is no evidence that, as this is what Pat Buchanan says, that Barack Obama knew of the IRS ploy to delay and deny tax exemptions to Tea Party groups, which would be an abuse of power and a trampling upon the constitutional rights of Tea Partiers who were denied the equal protection under the laws. He goes on to say that the GOP response to the lost emails of Lois Lerner with the IRS and crashed computers that went missing should be a drumbeat of demands for an appointment of an independent counsel, but not an impeachment committee in the House. He says President Obama claims that he did not learn of the IRS abuse until years after it began and weeks after the White House staff learned of it. In the absence of those emails, the claim cannot be refuted. In the Benghazi scandal, the president's defense is the same. He had no idea what was going on, and the cluelessness appears to be a credible defense. 2 weeks after the Benghazi atrocity, President Obama was at the UN still parodying the Susan Rice line about the anti-Muslim video having been the cause of it all. Has the president unilaterally rewritten the Obamacare law while ignoring the Congress that wrote it? Indeed, he has. But would a Republican Party that failed and folded when it tried to use its legitimate power of the purse to defund Obamacare really stand firm in an antietam battle to impeach the president of the United States, or is this just beer talk? He goes on and on to talk about a little bit more, but his argument is that it would just be a complete distraction in this election year. And so let me just for a minute maybe give you a little bit of history, because one of the questions we're going to put on the table today is, do you think it is wise, should the House consider impeachment? It's pretty clear that the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, does not want to do that. It was pretty clear yesterday when we talked with Representative Louis Gohmert that he did not want to do that, but I'd love to get your thoughts. But to understand impeachment, all you need to do is grab a constitution, and what you find in Article 1, Section 2 is the House of Representatives is given the sole power of impeachment. Article 1, Section 3 says that the Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments while the Chief Justice presides. And I think it is pretty clear that the framers of the Constitution intended that impeachment would be used perhaps more frequently than it has been, that it would be a check and balance to government, that it was actually crucial to a republic if you wanted to have one that had limited government and a separation of powers. If you would like to read a little bit more about this, it won't take you long. Read Alexander Hamilton's writing in Federalist Paper number 65. This was one of the very famous newspaper columns written by James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. Alexander Hamilton, writing in Federalist Paper number 65, said that the impeachment was necessary, quote, for those offenses which proceed from the misconduct of public men, or in other words, from the abuse or violation of some public trust, unquote. Well, that's a lot more than just occasional major treasonous act. This is certainly, I think, clear that they were expecting that they would actually have impeachment used more clearly, not just to remove the president, but a justice of the Supreme Court, perhaps members of Congress, or whatever that might be. But it has certainly not been the case. We've only had 3 presidents that ever faced impeachment. Back in 1868, the House impeached President Andrew Johnson, and the Senate, by 1 vote, failed to convict him. Then you have President Richard Nixon in 1974, where the House Judiciary voted to impeach him, so he resigned before that went forward. And then, of course, you have in 1998, President Bill Clinton impeached by the House, but acquitted the next year in the Senate. We could add to that one more, and that is the Senate passed a resolution of censure against President Andrew Jackson. Did that have any impact? Well, reach into your wallet, your pocketbook right now, your purse, pull out a $20 bill. Look whose picture's on the front of it. No, it didn't have much effect at all. And that's the point. Impeachment and censure have not had much of an impact. And so while there are some that say you could make a really strong case for impeachment, the reality is that voting for impeachment right now would probably have no effect other than to be a very significant distraction during this particular election year. If you'd like to join our conversation, we're going to move on to the subject of immigration in just a moment. But one of the questions on the table today is, do you believe that the statement by certainly a number of people, Sarah Palin fits into that category, and Andrew McCarthy and others calling for the impeachment of the president. On the other hand, what about some of the others that have certainly said it makes no sense, and in particular, Pat Buchanan fits into that category? That is one of the questions on the table. But when we come back, we're going to talk about this immigration surge and also have a chance to hear a very interesting collection of people advising the president that it would be good for him to spend at least 1 hour on our border looking at what is taking place.
We'll talk about that, take some of your phone calls right after this.
The Point of View Commentary with Kerby Anderson.
Over the last few years, various courts have issued rulings arguing that a state's marriage amendment violates the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. In a recent column, Ryan T. Anderson takes on this bizarre interpretation. He is the co-author of the book, What is Marriage? Man and Woman, a Defense, and has appeared on my radio program. So let's begin with some agreement with the court decisions. Most courts that cite the 14th Amendment argue that it protects the fundamental right to marry. Ryan Anderson agrees that the 14th Amendment does protect marriage, but the key question is how you define marriage. The founders, the framers, and the authors of the 14th Amendment all understood marriage to be between one man and one woman. Until a few years ago, every court decision accepted the traditional definition of marriage. Let's also acknowledge that the U.S. Constitution does not explicitly define marriage. I doubt any of the founders or framers would ever have thought that it would be necessary. So if the Constitution is silent on what marriage is, it would logically follow that states should be able to define what marriage is. Judge Paul Kelly of the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals dissented from two other justices and made that very point. He said the Constitution is silent on the regulation of marriage. Accordingly, the power is reserved to the states, albeit consistent with federal constitutional guarantees. Later on, he warned the court about the implications. He said, if the states are the laboratories of democracy, requiring every state to recognize same-gender unions, contrary to the views of the electorate and representatives, turns the notion of a limited national government on its head. Ryan Anderson concludes that whatever you might think about marriage, the courts can't redefine it. Marriage policies should be worked out through the democratic process, not dictated by unelected judges. Put simply, the 14th Amendment doesn't give judges the right to redefine marriage. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Open line this first hour if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. One of the questions on the table, should articles of impeachment be drawn up for the president? That's certainly one of the questions that has surfaced around Capitol Hill. It looks like most people are saying no, but I'd love to get your thoughts. 1-800-351-1212. One of the biggest issues, of course, facing this administration right now, front and center in all the news cycle, has to do with the fact that we have a humanitarian crisis at the border. And we have a lot of children walking across that border. Then they are supposed to be deported, yet we can see that that is not taking place. And there are those that are then being distributed to various centers around the country. This has created an interesting reaction from a couple of members of Congress. First, Representative Jim Bridenstine from Oklahoma wanted to actually go to the Fort Sill facility where these children are being held, and he was told that he could not do so. Now, again, this is an individual that is in Oklahoma. He's a representative. He represents an area near and around Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he was denied access to a facility in his state, in his area. And so he sent an official letter to
the Department of Health and Human Services saying that he wanted that tour. They then send a letter saying, well, we will allow you to tour the facility, but with a number of restrictions such as you cannot talk to the kids, you cannot talk to the staff, you cannot bring a recording device, and on and on and on and on. And so the Fort Sill is, of course, one of 3 military bases right now being used for temporary housing. He has been very upset that he's been treated that way. Now, he is a Republican, so you might say, well, maybe the president isn't necessarily as favorable to someone that's not in his party. Well, how about Henry Cuellar? He is a Democrat. By the way, some other Democrats have also been hearing from the White House that they're supposed to zip it and not talk about this. And so Henry Cuellar the other day said he was very upset with the fact that here you have pictures of President Obama shooting pool with the Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper rather than coming down and visiting the southwestern border. And he said, what I saw that, it just floored me, said Representative Henry Cuellar, who has been quite vocal, of course, in his criticism of the president. Well, I thought I'd play a montage that was put together by Grabian, and they actually give you a chance to hear 16 different suggestions, actually even criticisms, that the president should indeed go to the border and to see firsthand what is taking place. Now, for those of you that tend to watch us on the livecast, you can see the video that'll be playing with the audio, but for those of you that are only listening on radio, you will hear the voices first of Senator John Cornyn of Texas, then Henry Cuellar, who I mentioned just a minute ago, Democrat from the state of Texas, of course, the Texas Governor Rick Perry. Then you'll have a chance to hear from some various commentators, Andrea Mitchell, Chuck Todd. Then you'll hear some of the interaction with the press secretary, the president's press secretary, Donald Trump, and some others. So let's, if we can, hear what at least 16 people have suggested that the president might want to do, and that is to go to the border.
This week during his trip to Texas, it would take the president less than an hour on Air Force One to visit the border.
He can get on Air Force One right after the last fundraiser, get on Air Force One, go down to the border.
He's coming for a fundraiser. If he doesn't go to the border, I think it's a real reflection of his lack of concern about what's really going on there.
Will the White House, despite all its denials, find a way for the president to actually go to the border to look at the situation there? They say they won't.
A lot of folks on both sides of the aisle think it is imperative that the president visit the border, and it is not just Republicans.
And not go to the border, not see it for himself, although it would be a glorified photo opportunity. Still, it's pretty bad political. We call it the optics, that's right.
It just seems like an unforced error. I don't get it. And the more they've been asked about it, the more stubborn they're getting about it, the more they're digging in their heels on this thing.
Why wouldn't the president see value in visiting the border, if not this trip, then sometime soon?
The president has been to the border on a couple of previous occasions.
Does the president need to go to the border? Should he visit when he goes there this week?
The president can't be every place he'd like to be or even should be.
Well, he plays a lot of golf and he does a lot of fundraisers, and in the meantime, our country's going to hell.
The White House is afraid of the optics on that. It would look like the Katrina incident. This really is President Obama's Katrina, his failure to go down there.
It's a Katrina moment, right? It's a Katrina moment.
And you're going to a fundraiser?
This could be President Obama's Katrina.
I think it is. It doesn't make sense to compare this to a natural disaster.
He would refuse to carve out just 1 hour out of his fundraising schedule over the next 2 days in Texas to come to the border.
Take half an hour, 45 minutes at most to fly down there and then go see the situation. I think that is going to be very important.
Well, he's busy.
For days you could say not only is he not going to the border, but he's just fundraising and he's going to talk about the economy.
Well, I think what I was pretty declarative about is the fact that the president would not travel to the border, and he's not going to do that.
There we go,
Representative Bridenstine from Oklahoma. I mentioned Representative Cuellar. Let me mention 2 others, Representative Steve King from Iowa, Representative Steve Stockman from Texas. And they have been suggesting that what is happening at the border is really what is called a
Piven strategy. Now, if you've listened to this program before, you know we've talked about that. Back in the 1960s and into the 1970s and 80s, two professors, Richard Crawford and Francis Fox Piven, professors at Columbia University, by the way, where the president did attend as an undergraduate student, proposed a strategy by which they, at the time, were suggesting that you overload America's welfare system in order to precipitate a crisis. And as a result, they hoped that that would move us from our current welfare system into a national system of guaranteed income. Well, Representative Steve King from Iowa said that he felt, quote, that this current crisis is an attempt to flood the border with illegals and then, quote, is playing out the Crawford-Piven strategy. Steve Stockman from Texas says he believes the administration is, quote, trying to do a Crawford-Piven thing with the border, unquote. Now, whether this was intentional or accidental, we'll leave that for some of the questions and comments that I know many of you would like to make. But let's recognize that there is pretty good evidence now that the government was expecting some of this. For example, back in January, the Department of Homeland Security put out a purchase order for escort services for 65,000 unaccompanied illegal alien children. You can look at a funding report that came out from the Department of Justice, which was asking for funding for a pilot unaccompanied alien child program. Now, you might say, well, that was just simply because of some that they've had in the past, but of course the surge came shortly thereafter. And of course, whether this was intentional or accidental, the reality is that we have tens of thousands of children. The reality is that they are not going to be deported because a leaked Homeland Security memo just came out pointing out that only 0.1% of the Central American minors that had illegally entered the United States were deported during the last fiscal year. Maybe that percentage goes up a little bit, but I think you can, if you've been around at all, recognize that we are in a situation right now where as soon as any deportation did take place, there would be various individuals that would go and find a judge to declare it unconstitutional or get an injunction or try to postpone that. And of course, you're going to be seeing now, I think, over the next couple of months, continuous media stories, which I think are going to drive all sorts of public opinion against deportation. We're going to hear all sorts of stories that are going to tug at our hearts and cause us to once again wonder if we really have the will or even the desire to deport these children. So again, some very important comments coming from a lot of members of Congress. And I think it is important to recognize that there is one other factor before we open up for some of the phone calls, and that is a real push right now by the United Nations, as I mentioned briefly yesterday, to actually declare these illegal alien children as refugees. And I'll quote again from an Associated Press article. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees says he believes, quote, the U.S. and Mexico should recognize that this is a refugee situation, which implies that they shouldn't be automatically sent to their home countries, but rather receive international protection, unquote. And of course, the UN defines a refugee as someone who's been forced to flee his or her country because of persecution, war, or violence. This has always been really intended to address those who are fleeing places like Iraq, Syria, Sudan, Nigeria, not necessarily ever thought to apply to El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, or whatever. And of course, if indeed that becomes the de facto judgment, then it's going to be even more difficult to consider the deportation of many of these children. And as soon as indeed we do not deport them, there is going to be sent a signal to many other children and parents to send even more across the border. So I'd love to get your comments. 1-800-351-1212. I've put two eyes on the table. One is impeachment. The other is immigration. And if you would like to join our conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. Second hour today, we're going to be talking about some very important issues that we've talked about in the past with Diane Paddison and Sandra Crawford Williamson, Christian women in business. But in this first hour, an open line for your comments about some of the issues in the news. What are your thoughts? We'll take your calls right after this.
You are listening to Point of View. For materials offered during the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221.
zip 75221, or call our toll-free number 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Kerby Anderson.
We'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Two issues we put on the table. First of all, impeachment. Second of all, immigration. And certainly, as I look at our computer here, we have quite a number on both sides, so we'll cover both of those as we go along. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time and hold two very important issues simultaneously in our discussion. So let's go, first of all, to Missouri. KCMH. Karen, thank you for calling today.
Sure, I love your program. I think it's rather naive for all these people to be saying that President Obama has to go to the southern border to see what's happening. I think he knows exactly what's happening, and he's actually quite brilliant. While we're all sort of standing around saying, why is he doing this? He has no respect for America. He has the opportunity now to change America, bring all these kids in, and then there's going to be a perfect reason why the government has to make some more laws about how to protect children. And unless, in his lifetime, he could change. We will lose our traditions and our history. And we're all going to just stand around and say, how did this happen? He's telling us what he's going to do, and he's doing it, and we're not seeing it.
Well, and he did tell us that he wanted to be a transformative president. In some respects, he even used the illustration that in the way that Ronald Reagan was sort of transformative in the conservative vein, he wanted to be transformative in the progressive vein, or if you wanted to use another example, of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And so this is why you've had at least two members of Congress suggest that this fits very much this Cloward Piven strategy. Whether that was intentional or accidental, the reality is that's what we have now. And I think your point is well taken. I think there are a lot of people that maybe naively think, well, eventually we're going to round up these kids and we're going to send them home. And I think we have to be realistic enough to know that when you tell young people get on this bus, you're going to go to Delaware, you're going to go to Oklahoma, you're going to go to California, wherever it might be, and then you're supposed to report back for a hearing. A lot of them are just never going to show up again. And I think that's then going to create a second crisis, which, again, allows for the expansion of the government. So I appreciate your phone call today. Let's take another phone call. We'll go up to the state of Maine. Delsa, thank you for calling today.
Yes, I just, in listening to what you said, my color goes up in everything that I see that Obama does with the IRS, with Benghazi, with Fast and Furious, just every issue, one by one, immigration issue. He's just such a dishonorable man. He's a dishonorable president, and I'm a historian. So, but my husband is. I asked my husband very particularly, is he the most dishonorable president we've ever had? And my husband says, beyond a shadow of a doubt, he is. His atrocities eclipse what Nixon did. The things that he does is not only immoral, it's terrible for our country, and something needs to happen. It might not be politically expedient to impeach him, but for history's sake, we need to put this president where he belongs, the continuum of morality.
Well, appreciate your comments, and we're giving as many of you a chance to join our conversation today, talking about the debate that's taken place on Capitol Hill in part on the issue of impeachment. And you've had people like Sarah Palin suggest that that's what we need to do, and others like Pat Buchanan and more recently the Speaker of the House saying that's probably not the best strategy. So let's get your comments, and we'll go back and let's take another one on immigration. We'll go to South Carolina, WLPE. Sharon, thank you for calling today.
Hi, actually, thanks for taking the call, and I actually have a comment on the impeachment, too.
Go for it.
First of all, with the impeachment is time after time, case after case, Benghazi, the telephone thing with the IRS and the Tea Party thing, the issue of sending troops to Syria. Time after time, he's proved his incompetence to deal with these important issues. How can we have a president that doesn't know how to do anything? Now, with this, they called it the Katrina for him. It is actually the Watergate for him, because now they're not allowing even government representatives to go and see what's going on there. What are they hiding?
Well, and this is something that is puzzling to me as well. And I'm glad you brought that up, Sharon, because I'll let you get back to the immigration thing for just a minute. Of course, the two bleed together. And that is, in most cases, there is a lot that is usually done out in the open. I mean, after all, you would think right now that the administration want to say, look at the plight of these kids. We really need to step in. We need to really get involved. Instead, the president is staying away from the border. He is telling, as we can tell now from some of the Democratic members of Congress, telling people in his own party to zip it, don't talk about this at all.
Right.
We have stories now coming out of various homes being opened through some of the more liberal churches for these illegal alien children. But then the people that are taking these children in are told not to tell anybody about this. So you say there's something more to this because go for it.
Just think about it. Now we're getting influx from the Southern American countries and Mexico. What's to stop them from sending over kids that have been brainwashed into being terrorists and come right through? Oh, welcome. Come on in and we'll pay you. Just like we paid those bombers at Boston. Paid for them to drive Mercedes and have a house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy. What about people that are making over $1 million a year, each donating $10,000 to take care of these kids?
Well, again, you raised some good questions. The questions, of course, there are questions about the cost, questions about whether or not they would assimilate, questions about the diseases. Big question that has been raised by a number, and I did a commentary on Monday about this particular group of individuals in this town, Lawrenceville, Virginia, which is primarily an African-American community. About 3/4 of all the people there are African-American. I think the president and the administration thought, well, most of these people voted for the president, so they'll go along. Well, there were 1,000 people. There's only 1,500 people in the city, or the town, I guess would be better accurately to say, in the town, and over 1,000 people showed up at the town hall meeting because they did not want these kids, 500 of them, being put in the what had become closed down black college, because they were afraid of the safety issue. The sheriff says, you've got kids up to the age of 17 going to be on a college campus, some adult supervision, probably not a lot. We can imagine what that's going to be like, and there aren't going to probably be classes convened, and there aren't parents giving any kind of direction. I mean, this has the potential of actually beginning to lose control entirely of some of the things happening in some of these communities. And like I said, when you have Representative Bridenstine in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, being told he can't go to the military base in his state, I think it's even in his district, if I remember right, Fort Sill, something's up. I don't know what it is, but something is certainly up. But let's give a few more of you a chance to join our conversation today. Joan in Florida, what would you like to share with us today? Joan, are you there? I'm going to put Joan on hold for just a minute. She may be checking something here. Let's go to Ron in West Virginia. Ron, what you would like to share with our listeners today?
Well, about the border, there's about three things I have here. We're at war. Why do we have an open border? We can send troops all over the world to do all kind of missions, and we got a great military. Now, I was in the Army myself.
Thank you.
But we're at war. We have an enemy. Seal the border, period.
It's interesting. Some of the National Guard were sent over to Iraq to actually seal off the border between Iraq and Syria. So here we had National Guard troops going across the ocean, across the globe to the other side of the world to actually protect the border of Iraq when we had troops there. Of course, it hasn't worked out so well now with what's happened with ISIS and everything. And we can't send some of those same National Guard troops down to help the Border Patrol to secure our border. There's something wrong with that, don't you think?
Yes. Yes.
Any other comments real quickly before I come to a break?
Why not impeach him for the lack of performing his duty? I worked all my life as a welder. If I couldn't do my duty, I wouldn't have had a job.
They would have given you pink slip and might not have even given you more than an hour's notice. I've worked before in machine shops, and I've seen some at the end of the day as they punch out and say, well, that's the last time you're punching out. Pick up your tools. We will encourage you to find employment elsewhere.
And the other thing is, get ready for Jesus who's coming for his bride. We got to get ready. These are the signs. So we better read them and prepare.
Well, Ron, we're going to have Tim LaHaye on, and he's got a new book out on the book of Revelation. So when he is on, you certainly want to be listening to that program, too. Let's take a break, and let me just mention as we go to a break that we've posted a couple of articles. First one there is the Pat Buchanan article, Impeachment a Bridge Too Far, so you can read what he has to say. Second one is a piece on presidential inaction and the border crisis. It's written by John Hayward, was in Human Events. I haven't really quoted from it today, so it's something you might want to read. It adds a little more to the conversation we're having. The third one, which we'll get to probably tomorrow or Friday, is the fact that Democrats want to override the Hobby Lobby decision. So today they have put a bill in the hopper which would actually overturn the Supreme Court decision. We won't get to that today, I can see as I look at the clock, but we will get to that later. But you can read ahead about that. We'll certainly cover that later in the week. Let's come back, though. I want to take a few more of these phone calls. Some of you have waited patiently to come on the program. We want to hear your comments, and we'll hear those right after these important messages.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes. We'll take some of your phone calls. Second hour today, we'll have Diane Paddison and Sandra Crawford Williamson in studio. We'll be talking about Christian women in business and young professionals. Let me just mention that tomorrow we'll also have John Fuller with us for a little bit. He is the host of Focus on the Family. And then Cheryl Chumley with us. A new book out, Police State USA, very similar to some of the conversations we've had with John Whitehead, his book, Government of Wolves. And so we'll cover many of these issues. Along the way, we'll continue looking at what is happening on this issue of immigration, impeachment, and all sorts of other topics, as well as the attempt to overturn the Supreme Court decision on Hobby Lobby, which we'll try to cover a little bit more in depth tomorrow. If not, we'll certainly cover it in full on Friday in our weekend edition roundtable. Let's go back to the phones. I think we have Joan this time in Florida. Joan, thanks for joining us here on Point of View.
You're welcome, and I love your program. I first want to say that Obama's the worst president that we've ever had, and I think American people ought to wake up. They ought to impeach him and get him out, because anything he says is not true. He is a liar, and I have a lot of friends that are black, and they said, well, we voted for him because he's black, and I said, he's not black. He is not 100% black. I said, if you want 100% black, vote for Allen West, the Republican in Florida. I think Allen West would make a great president. And as far as the immigration, I think they ought to send the people back to their country. I do not think they ought to let them come in what they're doing with this illegal aliens, and I think they ought to seal off the borders. Thank you for listening to me.
Well, thank you for your comments. We're going to give as many of you a chance to join our conversation. Let's stay in Florida for another minute, and we'll go to WSEB. And Robert, what would you like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, maybe you've already answered my question, but thanks for taking my call. My question is, if they're patrolling these borders, how do these 65,000 get in here?
Yeah, that's what I want to know, because, first of all, we sort of talked about that the other day a little bit with Louis Gohmert. In one sense, the Border Patrol is simply overwhelmed because many of them are not patrolling the border right now. They're shuttling kids back and forth. They're changing diapers and all the rest. The illustration that I used is years ago, sometimes when young people want to come into this country, they'd all sort of amass at the border. Let's just take Tijuana as an example, south of San Diego, and they'd all run across the bridge at the same time. Well, there were too many young people. The Border Patrol would catch one or two and stop them, but the rest would make their way in, and that's kind of what's happening now. They're just overwhelming the system. That being said, there are also some very porous areas on the border. One of those is an area which is really governed by the Endangered Species Act, and so the Border Patrol have much less authority and cannot travel around as freely as they can. And so you can see some coming through the Tucson corridor in Arizona, some coming through the McAllen corridor in Texas. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense to build walls in some areas and not have walls or patrols in other areas. So for all of those reasons, I think, Robert, you're really asking a very good question. If indeed we think that we have controlled borders, think about the fact that it is young children literally walking across the border, swimming across the border, or whatever it might be, and then holding up their hands and having the Border Patrol take them into custody. I think it puts a lie to the idea that we have secured borders. But let's go back to the phones. Angela in Texas, what would you like to share with us today?
Hello, thank you for taking my call. I want to agree with that lady that called and said Obama, he is not black. If black people need to know that. See, that's false impression. Like if they didn't know the truth about him. And the second thing, he needs to be impeached. And the third thing, he is the worst. I mean, the worst president we ever had. And I don't remember all of them. I'm not that old. And still, he needs to be out of there. And Sarah Palin, she is right. He needs to be impeached. It seems like when we get somebody that knows what's really going on, they try to knock him down with these certain whatever, they always come up with something, and they need him out of there. Because if he has his way, he's going to be like it is in Kenya.
Okay, well, appreciate your comment. We didn't hear all of it, but I think we picked up most of it. The closer you can be to the receiver on your telephone, the easier it is for us to hear you. And let's go back to the phones and see if we can grab one or two more phone calls. Probably only two left in this hour, so we'll go to California first, KYCC. Gail, thank you for calling today.
Hi, well, thank you for taking my call. There should be something, unfortunately, done about the border situation. Being a Christian, I would certainly love to see everybody help, but you just can't do that.
Yes.
And, impeachment, of course, I could call for it. Would it help? I don't know. And wouldn't that make Biden our president? And
yeah, you're the first one to bring that up. Some people have said that may be worse. I don't know. I'm not even going to get into that. But certainly, let's be honest, no president who was impeached has ever been removed from office. You've only had 3 presidents where the House has voted for impeachment. One resigned, Richard Nixon, and the other 2 were able to be acquitted. So it has not functioned the way I think the framers intended. I think they intended it to be more like what you see in Parliament, a vote of no confidence. If you get to the point where you are convinced that a president is not fulfilling the will of the people, that was a direct quote from Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist Papers, then that was the case. But now we've raised it to such a high level that when we're really looking for treason or high crimes, misdemeanors, we are defining that so high up, and we also have such a partisan Congress right now. I think it would be unlikely that he would be removed from office anyway. But there are some that say we should do it for justification of nothing else. It's asterisks on the record of the president, perhaps. I don't know. Let's take one more phone call because we're just about out of time. We'll go to Kentucky. George, I guess you'll be the last call of the hour. And what would you like to share with us?
Oh, thank you for taking my call today. I would like to talk about this border issue. To me, it's the Democratic Party along with President Obama trying to railroad these people in here. And now they have it. They want to set up judges there on the border, get these people in here, get them legalized. Then that way they can vote, and then they can take over the House seats as well as the Senate and further their political agenda, which is running this country. And as far as impeachment, no, it probably wouldn't do any good to impeach him. He wouldn't be impeached before he got out of office, but it might stop. They could put in there a bill to stop these crazy things that he's doing, overriding Congress and bypassing Congress with his pen and his phone.
Yeah.
If they impeach him, then that would at least stop that. And I think they ought to go after Harry Reid and some of the senators, that has ruined this country by passing bills without even knowing what's in them. I mean, they're not fit to represent us when they do such things as that.
Well,
thank you.
I appreciate you calling in today. Wish we had a little more time, but we're coming to the top of the hour. Let me mention again, we're going to be changing topics in the second hour, but this won't be the only time we'll discuss these issues. We'll give you that opportunity to do so again. A couple of things that we have put on the website today for you. The first one on impeachment. A very well-argued piece by Pat Buchanan. I've also written a commentary that you can obtain if you are already receiving my commentaries. You'll be hearing it and seeing it soon. Then we have one by John Haywood on presidential inaction in the border crisis. A very good list of things that you might want to be aware of. And then one more that we've posted, which we'll talk about in the future, the attempts by at least the Senate Democrats to overturn the decision that was rendered by the Supreme Court on Hobby Lobby. And we'll come to that a little bit later, probably later in this week. So some great opportunities for you to learn from some of the articles we've posted. In the second hour, we've got some videos and some web links for you to find. And of course, if some of this material that you thought was helpful and you'd like to hear it again, you can go and check out our podcast button. And of course, we do have a live cast. So in just a minute, you'll be able to see my two guests in studio with me and watch that. And you can also watch that again as well. So you can watch it or listen to it at your leisure. And if there's something that you would want to hear again, or facts, figures, other information, we're certainly always available to make that available to you. All of it available at the website, pointofview.net. We're going to take a break, talk about professional Christian women in the business field, right after these important messages.
Across the nation, this is Point of View. For materials offered during the broadcast, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries and is supported by your generous tax-deductible contributions.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about of things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I'm constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
With you
thinking about you. Jesus, I love you, how I adore you. I can't stop thinking about you.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour, we're going to spend some time, as we have in the past, talking about the very effective ministry and expanding and exploding ministry to young professional women. And if you know an individual that fits that category, or if you are one of those, I hope you will pay attention to this. Pass this information on to others that you might know, because this is an exciting, exploding kind of ministry that I sort of knew was going to happen. Let me go around the round table first and introduce our two in-studio guests. And if you'd like to watch this, you can watch it on our Livecast, which is on our website, pointofview.net. And that is, first of all, bring back to the microphone, who's been with us many times before, Diane Paddison, the founder and CEO of Forward, and also a graduate of Harvard with an MBA, but Oregon State University. We have that in common, don't we?
We do. We're Beavers at heart.
And so she has been a featured columnist for Today's Christian Women. She and her husband, Chris, have 4 children, live in the Dallas area, and has been traveling all over the country to develop this ministry, which we'll talk about more in just a minute. But I also want to introduce for the first time somebody I've known, but we've not had on the program, a woman that actually serves as the COO for Forward, Sandra Crawford Williamson, a seasoned executive author and public speaker. I love on your bio there, it talks about the fact that she loves all things international, has her bachelor's MBA, is a Mensa member, and it's just a delight to have you in the studio for the first time.
Thanks for having me, Kerby. I'm so excited. We've been talking about this for a while.
We certainly have. And Diane, I guess, once again, we have new programs, new listeners, new radio stations, so it might be good to give a little bit of the history. Part of that is illustrated by the fact that today we're featuring your book, Work, Love, Pray, which they can get at your website, but we also have it on the website. We also have a video. It's a 3-minute video that explains that from your website, so people can follow that. But give us a brief history of what you developed a few years ago and has absolutely exploded beyond at least my expectations.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kerby. I just really saw that there was this big change going on demographically with 71% of women in the workforce with children under 18. And over half of advanced degrees were going to women. 30 years ago, it was 6%. And the percent of primary breadwinners, now they're women in 40% of families. So there's this huge new market. And when I checked to see if there were any national ministries serving women in the workplace led by women, there were none. And we felt that if we could really meet this unmet need with something that was valuable, that we thought that God would really bless it and it would explode, and it has. And so our real focus is around connection, leadership, and support. And we'll get into a little more around connection, which is around our digital, our local groups, and our mentoring. And we can, get into leadership and support as we have time.
Certainly. Let me mention the book for just a minute, because that is one that we've featured before. It's published by Zondervan. People can look for it in their local bookstore. But now you have a study guide. So for all of our listeners that already have the book, now there's a study guide, and I think it is wonderful that you have those two together, because this is something that I think is going to be a great resource for many churches, women's groups, small groups, fellowship groups, and those kinds of things. Talk about how that's developed just in the last couple of months as well.
Yeah, it's been amazing. We actually have an amazing intern, Avery Dale, that actually put this together for us. It just went live on Amazon day before yesterday. And local groups are using it as small groups within churches, within forward groups in different cities. And it really comes at, how can I keep my faith as my foundation, my relationships as my priority, and see my work as my calling? So it really is the only study guide that comes at it from a woman who's in the workforce.
And I think anyone that's in the workforce certainly struggles with some of that, but women even more so, because usually they are in a situation of not only sometimes being the breadwinner, but the nurturer, the family member. You share some incredibly powerful stories from your own life in there. I appreciate your vulnerability. So I do commend that to any of our listeners that maybe are saying, I really do not know how to put all this together. I mean, I have my Christian life, I have my family life, I have my business experiences, sometimes I have my civic activities. I just really do not know how to connect all of that together, and I thought it was outstanding that you called it Work, Love, Pray, because that really kind of gets into the different circles of a woman's life.
Right, right. And we actually, on our website, we also provide content on Fridays around work, love, and pray, so our readers can get that even on our website.
I might also mention, and we're going to send people to your website. As a matter of fact, if you go to our web link section, the first one takes you to forwardwomen.org. In case you, in the word 4 is the number 4. But again, we've got that in case you are driving right now, don't have a chance to write that down. And I love the newsletter comes out. I must admit, I'm a man kind of listening into your women's conversation, but so many times I get things out of it. And as you well know, every once in a while I give you an idea of something you might want to cover. And so I highly recommend anybody in the listening audience, especially you women that are working right now, or if you know someone that is who's working right now and not listening to the program, really recommend that they get that newsletter, because it's a way in which you connect up with those individuals.
Well, and we try to be a real easy resource. So we bring in sources that are secular and non-secular, all in our Friday faves, so you don't have to look for them, that our team is pulling it all together for you.
Well, since we're talking digital, let's turn to Sandra, because that's what you've been working on and really trying to educate people. It's great face-to-face, but I know a lot of the individuals that you are ministering to around the country are actually connecting up to you through the digital works that you are actually putting together.
Absolutely. While we're almost in 20 cities now with local groups, face-to-face forward local groups, we do know that there are millions of women out there. 71% of American women that have children in the home under the age of 18 are working in the workforce at least 30 hours a week. So there are millions of American women out there that are working and trying to juggle what I call the three-legged stool of a career and their families and relationships, and also to maintain their faith and to continue to stay dialed in with people that share their value system. And so we wanted to make the amazing content that Forward, I call us a content machine, because it's pretty incredible. We're putting out 2 pieces of original content a week on either work, love, or pray issues. With women from all over the world. And then about every other week, Diane does an original piece. And then on Friday, we tie it all together with the Friday Faves. But not only is it a blog, it's a full digital platform. So we have an amazing website, and then we're on 7 different social media sites. And so not only can you be on the website and be receiving a newsletter, you mentioned the newsletter, everyone should go to forwardwomen.org, the number 4, WORDwomen.org, and just simply sign up for one of the newsletters, or all 3, and get a taste. That'll give you a flavor for what we do. But we're also on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Google+, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. And so whatever your flavor of preference in terms of how you get content pushed to you, we're there.
And I might just mention, for those of you a little bit older, she was not speaking in tongues. Those are actually all platforms. So we're going to take a break and come back and talk a little bit more about what is there, because it is a really exciting ministry. And I've said to you before, Diane, that I knew it was going to explode. I mean, sometimes you just see something like this happening. I remember when True Love Waits came out and See You at the Pole, you just knew it was going to go national. I knew that this was going to be successful, and it has been. So we're going to come back, talk a little bit more about how to minister to women in the workforce. All that coming up right after this.
The Point of View Commentary with Kerby Anderson.
Over the last few years, various courts have issued rulings arguing that a state's marriage amendment violates the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. In a recent column, Ryan T. Anderson takes on this bizarre interpretation. He is the co-author of the book, What is Marriage? Man and Woman, a Defense, and has appeared on my radio program. So let's begin with some agreement with the court decisions. Most courts that cite the 14th Amendment argue that it protects the fundamental right to marry. Ryan Anderson agrees that the 14th Amendment does protect marriage, but the key question is how you define marriage. The founders, the framers, and the authors of the 14th Amendment all understood marriage to be between one man and one woman. Until a few years ago, every court decision accepted the traditional definition of marriage. Let's also acknowledge that the U.S. Constitution does not explicitly define marriage. I doubt any of the founders or framers would ever have thought that it would be necessary. So if the Constitution is silent on what marriage is, it would logically follow that states should be able to define what marriage is. Judge Paul Kelly of the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals dissented from two other justices and made that very point. He said the Constitution is silent on the regulation of marriage, or accordingly, the power is reserved to the states, albeit consistent with federal constitutional guarantees. Later on, he warned the court about the implications. He said, if the states are the laboratories of democracy, requiring every state to recognize same-gender unions, contrary to the views of the electorate and representatives, turns the notion of a limited national government on its head. Ryan Anderson concludes that whatever you might think about marriage, the courts can't redefine it. Marriage policies should be worked out through the democratic process, not dictated by unelected judges. Put simply, the 14th Amendment doesn't give judges the right to redefine marriage. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
In studio, if you'd like to join our conversation at any point, feel free to give us a call, 1-800-351-1212. And in studio with me, Diane Paddison, Sandra Crawford, Williamson with Forward. And I would certainly encourage those of you that are in the workforce, maybe if you know individuals that are, this is a ministry that I hope will encourage you and empower you and maybe cause you to consider and reevaluate some of your priorities. Let's, if we can, kind of work our way through some of the things that you've been doing, Diane. Connect, lead, and support. First of all, connect. I was just commenting off the air, and let's mention on the air, the first time you were on, you were talking about a group in Dallas and maybe one in Portland. It's grown a lot more since then. So talk about the extent of which you have these connections now.
Yeah. We just feel very blessed that God has just opened doors all over the country. So we're in Seattle, Portland, San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco. We're in Dallas, Tulsa, Atlanta, Washington, D.C. We have groups in Orlando, New York. Austin, Chicago. What did I miss? Phoenix. We had 50 at the launch there. So, and we have many in formation in Denver, Houston. So pretty much any major city, and you can go to our site and see where we are located.
Sandra, you have, 21,000 unique visitors came to your online community, something like that?
Well, that was last year. Now it's very exciting because we're hovering around just under 1,000 unique visitors a week.
A week?
A week.
Wow.
So that just talks about the tremendous growth. And it's from people all over. I mean, while we have groups in major cities, we have a large following, in very rural areas. I was raised in the country. Diane was raised on a farm. I mean, you don't have to be in a big city to want to have fellowship with other career-minded Christian women. And so, we have the benefit of a digital platform that allows people from anywhere to come to our site. So that's what's really special. Is we were talking at the break, someone could start a local group in a town of 10,000 people, where two or more are gathered, right? So we find that, you really only need 5 or 6 people to do a really good small group book study around the Work, Love, Pray study guide. So we encourage people, go to the website. There's all sorts of info on there on how to start a forward local group.
Well, and talk about what happened in San Diego, because I want that illustration to help people understand that this could be a real outreach that a church could even have.
Exactly. We just launched in San Diego the 3rd week of June. And at that launch, we asked people, how did you hear about Forward? And many of them hear about it from our website in many different ways. But 5 of the 16 that were at the launch there said, we're not a part of a church family. We actually feel really comfortable coming to Forward in the conference room at CB Richard Ellis. But we're not as comfortable walking into a church by ourselves. We've just moved here, or we've been away from church for a long time, and we were really intrigued and wanted to be a part of a group of women that were like me.
One of the things we said, and we've done this, I think, every time, Diane, you've been on, we want to challenge some people to actually start a group and talk about what that would mean, because we have broadcasts that go out to 42 different states, and I can look at your chart and even the list that you have. There are places where we broadcast right now where there might be women that say, I'd love to find 2 or 3 other women. Maybe they're already on the digital platform. We could get together and start a group. What does that entail?
Right. Just go to our website, respond to our website, and say exactly what you just said. I'd like to start a group in this city. Here's my information. And we have Katie Reif, who's our director of local groups, that is there to support you in doing that.
Okay, we've got to talk about mentoring. We always do when we have you on. Titus 2 talks about older women and younger women, and certainly there are so many young women that I've run into that are looking for people as talented as you are to be mentors, or other ones that could come alongside and say, here's some help in the business world. Here's some help on trying to organize your family. And you have really had a heart for the mentoring program. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Sure. It is my passion. When I was in the C-suite of a couple Fortune 500 companies, I developed a program with my team, and we also took a program that Mrs. Laura Bush has developed at the Bush Center, and I'm actually a mentor in her program too. And we squished them together and took the best parts and put it into a 10-week program that has 7 sessions, because we really believe strongly that we want you to just get a taste of how powerful it is when you have a mentor. And we've actually had mentor pairs that were from Australia to Dallas. So people come to us from all over the world, not just in the United States. And we have a prescribed 7 sessions. 2 are actually facilitated. You apply as a mentee. We match you with a mentor, and these mentors are amazing. And our testimonials, we actually, at our LA launch a couple weeks ago, we had a woman by the name of Kelly say, I found out about Forward through the mentor program, and I was actually mentored by a woman who's younger than me, because I was a stay-at-home mom and launched back into the workforce just a few years ago. And my mentor Tinu in Boston actually had been in the workforce for 15 years. So she was much better to help me with the areas I needed. And then I was able to mentor her around some areas from a spiritual and family perspective.
Very, very good. Sandra, your comments about the mentoring program. You've had a chance to sit back and watch it. And certainly we've known Diane's passion, but I'd love to hear your comments about it as well.
Well, you mentioned one of my passions earlier, which is women going to church by themselves, and which ties into sort of the mentoring program. You know, I always tell people, anytime I have a platform of two people, I say, if you see anyone sitting at church by themselves, go sit by them. Invite them to lunch after. I didn't get married till I was 36. And there was a time there where I strayed from the church, because to go to church by yourself is very intimidating. And then you don't fit in as a 35-year-old career woman. I can't go to the singles group. I could be their mom. I am not in with the divorce group. I'm not in with the marrieds. I'm not in with this, have young kids. So you don't fit into a label at church. And in fact, there's a recent study that shows 27% of career women in America are leaving the church because they don't feel that they are spoken to from the pulpit, or that they're being utilized, their talents and gifts are being utilized, and that they don't fit in. And so that's something I'm very passionate about. And so through mentor programs like Forwards, which I'm excited to say I am a part of, this class that kicks off with our phone call this Friday. So the summer class, which is class number 5. And I actually am been blessed to be paired with a wonderful woman in Washington, D.C., who was just promoted yesterday. I said, well, heck, you don't need me. You just got promoted. So, but it's a wonderful program. Diane's very, very humble, as you and I both know, Kerby.
Of course.
But, this program has been nationally recognized by several industries, and it's fantastic. It's not just, hey, meet your mentor, go have some coffee. It's very organized, but it's not structured and all about rules, but you have specific goals and tasks that the mentoring pair are to accomplish on a timeline, and it's just so amazing and thorough. And women, come to us after that are mentors and say, hey, I thought I was going to be kind of the wise sage that was going to take the person under my wing, but I was gifted more through this relationship, I think, than she was. And then we have mentees who say, oh my goodness, for me to find a mentor like this in my company or my town, that is impossible. So, both sides have really been tremendously blessed.
Great opportunities. Let's take a break. When we come back, though, I wanted to give many of you a chance to join the conversation. Perhaps you have some comments or questions. Maybe you've worked in the business world and wondered about that. Perhaps some of you have already been through Forward and would like to share your testimony. We'd love to hear from you. 1-800-351-1212. But I also thought I'd come back, Diane, and ask you a question. Sandra talked about the fact that oftentimes women in the church don't feel like the sermon relates to the business world. I think that's true for both men and women. And years ago, when we at Probe Ministries published a newsletter called Spiritual Fitness in Business, one of the writers had done kind of a linguistic analysis of the kinds of words that are used in the corporate world, in the boardroom, and then compared that to the kind of words used from the pulpit. And he found that, remember the old Venn diagrams? There was hardly an overlap. And so I think a lot of people in the business world say, great sermon. I have no idea how to apply any of it starting on Monday. And I know that's another reason why I hope people will find out more about Forward. So let's give you a chance if you'd like to ask a question. 1-800-351-1212. We have, of course, the link to Forward, and you can go to that directly forwardwomen.org. Or, of course, we also have the link on the website. We also have that 3-minute video, which gives you a little bit of the Forward mission, and that's an interview with some women. So, first of all, I would encourage you to watch it. It's only 3 minutes long. Then hit the share button, and that means you could put it on your Facebook page or your blog or something like that, and that would be a way to expose others. And if you know somebody that would benefit from this, maximize our impact today by sending it on to them. So all of it available at our website, pointofview.net. And don't forget, again, we've been talking about the book as well, Work, Love, Pray. It is published by Zondervan. You probably can find it in your local bookstore, but you also have ways to get it from Forward, and now a study guide as well. So some great resources. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Diane and with Sandra, but we'll also take your phone calls. Stay tuned.
are listening to Point of View. For materials offered during the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number, 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation today. If you'd like to join our conversation at any point, 1-800-351-1212. Diane and Sandra in studio with us. And Sandra, just before we get into the big question I had for Diane about the fact that the language of the pulpit oftentimes and the language of the boardroom are a little bit different, I'm sure some of the women and even some of the men, maybe even pastors who are thinking about this would be a great ministry, saying, okay, what exactly, how do I explain this? You know, and that's probably difficult. It doesn't lend itself to a one-line tagline here.
Right.
Or how can I benefit? What are the benefits that come from being involved? Can you speak to that for a minute?
Well, you know, I always tell stories. I'm a storyteller. But Diane's got a great example just from yesterday, so I'll hand it to her. But, you know, we have found, as professional Christian women, we're trying to balance that three-legged stool, right? So we're trying to run a house. We're trying to have relationships, whether you're single and you want to date, or whether you're married with no kids or married with kids. I have 3 kids that are 8 and under, right? So working full-time, juggling 3 children, running a household, you know, and I have a great husband with a flexible schedule, but I don't have a wife, right?
Yeah.
So somebody's got to do all that stuff.
That's right.
And it falls on my shoulders. And so you have a lot going on there. Then you're trying to continue to grow your career, whether you're on your way up or you've hit a plateau or you're doing what we call lean back, right? Or you're re-engaging your career after your children have gone to school or maybe off to college, whatever phase you're in your career. And then the third leg of the stool is trying to maintain your faith and walk with the Lord and have time and feel like you're part of something with fellowship. I mean, we know God tells us in the Bible repeatedly to be with like-minded people. And so when you have those three legs of the stool and you're looking around at work saying, well, you know what? None of you folks really have these same things that I'm doing. And then you go home and you're by yourself with toddlers, right? And then you go to church and you don't hear your language there, as you mentioned. It can be one of those, you know, sort of lonely feelings. And so we have story after story of people just coming to a forward lunch and meeting women and going, where have you been all my life, right? I've, you know,
Sure.
I felt that, certainly. I cried like a baby at my first forward event because
How about that?
I had a 25-plus year career that culminated in the C-suite, and there was never anyone that looked like me or sounded like me. You know, I felt like a peacock surrounded by, you know, penguins. And so Forward really allows you to be with a group of like-minded people.
Very good.
Have amazing fellowship with people that are going through the same things you are, both in career and faith and home and relationships. And we have tremendous amount of resources. So whether it's digital resources on the website that we talked about, or it's amazing speakers that you can come here, you know, for free or $10, $15 with a great lunch, or books or articles or all the content that we're writing on a weekly basis to just pour into you. Diane's got a great example from just yesterday.
From the church, yeah.
Yes, I had an opportunity to meet with one of the pastors from Irving Bible. And she and I just spent some time, and I was sharing with her about Forward, and she said, this is an amazing resource. You know, a lot of women in our congregation are in the workforce, and we haven't had any study that really supports them in what they're doing in their life. And so she said, our plan is to do this with our staff and then actually have this study with your study guide as one of our summer sessions next year. So I'm looking forward to having Irving Bible be one of our first churches to do that.
Well, we're talking about that. We have a number of pastors that listen to this program. We have sometimes seminary students that maybe are getting out from class if they had summer school or actually are not studying right now and will be in the pastorate. What would you say to them? Because it does seem to me that this is a very important segment of the church. And Sandra reminded us that oftentimes churches aren't doing a very good job of reaching them or ministering to them.
Great question, Kerby. I think, first of all, get Work, Love, Pray, because it is a good resource to help you understand the woman that's working in outside of the home. And that's why we even have on the front cover, this book is for working women and those who want to understand them. So that's a resource. Plus, I would say get a group of women that are actually in this demographic and just sit down and do a focus group with them and go have lunch and find out, what would help us meet your needs. And I think just listening to what people in your congregation who care about you, who want you to be successful as a pastor, give you feedback. I think that will give you a lot of information, because I think a lot of pastors haven't had the time or thought about taking the time to really understand this growing demographic that determines 80% of the time whether their family goes to church or not.
Yes.
And obviously, economically, they're growing in number.
Well, and they're also usually the ones controlling the pocketbook. So there's a lot of reasons. And that brings me back to the point we made just a minute ago. These linguistic studies that have been done saying that what words I hear in a boardroom are not the kind of words I hear from the pulpit. Now, I'm not suggesting that an individual change his sermon to sound like you just walked out of one of the Fortune 500 companies. But it does seem to me that we're missing an opportunity to connect. And this was a very disturbing statistic that Sandra gave just a minute ago. What, 37%?
27%.
27, okay.
Of professional Christian women are leaving the church. And I like to tell my pastor friends, and by the way, they're taking their families and their wallet with them.
Yes. Yeah. And it seems to me that
if mom's not getting up for church on Sunday, we know the families aren't going.
So what would you suggest there? Because, again, a lot of seminary training doesn't really prepare you to interact with the professional world. And yet I think we're missing a real opportunity to minister to those individuals who are the future leaders of the church, actually.
Right. I think we can be a resource to those pastors and help them. So we'd love for you to come to us, and we'd love to help you with that. Because there's a lot of different things you can do from a programming perspective, from a language perspective, from using their gifts as a part of being involved in the church perspective. And I think you'll be amazed at what happens. I'll just share one quick story. We have a wonderful friend in Portland, Oregon, Marianne, who was an executive at Hallmark, went to Western Seminary and got her degree, is now on the executive pastoral team in a church in Lake Oswego. And she just went to the team and said, we need to do Bible study on Monday nights. And they said, oh, those women are too tired. Their kids, they want to go home to their kids. She said, let's just give it a try. In a month, she had 300. So it was just about even when Bible study was being offered. It can be that simple.
Yeah, well, those are the kinds of things that you certainly can help with. Sandra, let's talk also, we've been talking about connect, but also lead. There's a section here that you have about your content being published by the media and all the opportunities. I mentioned just a minute ago, just in passing, to watch the video that we have there, to hit the share button, but talk about how we can educate lots of people maybe that aren't even listening to the program right now about some of these issues. What would you suggest?
Right. Well, it's interesting because, getting the word out, as Diane mentioned, sometimes it's just little things, little language changes. With small kids, I can't go to a 6:30 a.m. Bible study because I'm doing carpool, right? And I can't go to a 10:30 on a Wednesday morning one because I'm working. And even 6:30 is hard because it's dinner time and bedtime. But you schedule me for an 8:30 or 9 o'clock p.m. one, and I'm there. And so it's really amazing. And so, we are very passionate that we want to be able to share, coming from the business world, I call it tips and tricks, but it's really just sharing how to speak to the women that are walking in our shoes. And you mentioned this, and I hear this quite often, Kerby, that it's not just women, that it's also professional men often feel that the church could speak to them a little differently. Diane and I both go to church every week, and we're very dialed into our church and support our churches very passionately. And we don't want to be a substitute for church. We want to help churches understand the target audience that we seem to have struck a chord with. So how you can tell people, Diane said it, I'm going to say it again, read the book. It's $15. It's the best $15 you could ever spend, and then pass it on. Give it to your pastor, mark the pages, say, hey, you need to read this. If you're a pastor, a seminary student, definitely read it. And, I'm campaigning currently to try and get these types of books and classes and topics brought into seminaries. Because if we can start, at upstream and change not just the language, you mentioned the linguistic studies, but also just how you look at a woman in your pew, right? I can make a mean tater tot casserole, but it's not my gift, right? That's not my Ephesians 2:10 calling. But I can do that if you need me to, but I can also do a lot of other things. And when I talk to men about this issue, challenge at church, you know what they say? Sandra, I totally hear you because I can do more than drive the golf cart. So what I want to tell pastor and seminary students, there's this amazing pool of skills and abilities and gifts sitting in your pew on Sunday morning. How to tap into that is definitely something, I'm passionate about and how to help them do that, not to offer a substitute.
We'll take a break, come back with more right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes today, and if you would like to join us, probably are not going to have time today to get into that, but we will give you opportunities in the future to comment because we have a lot to cover in this last segment, so let's do so real quickly. Diane Paddison with us, as well as Sandra Crawford Williamson. And Sandra, let me come for you first. Some of the takeaways. You have so many great resources. You have new programs getting started. Take us through all the things that are happening even over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I would say is we have local groups, as we mentioned, almost 20 of them across the country. So go to the website and find a local group event. For example, there's one on Monday in Dallas. There's one coming up where we're launching a new group in Nashville. There are things going on in Phoenix and San Francisco and Chicago. I mean, all over the country, there are Forward events. So if you're in one of those cities, go to forwardwomen.org and go find one of those events. If you sign up for the newsletter, those events will get pushed to your inbox and you can sort of stay engaged that way. And the second thing I would say, if you're out there and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this is my life, we find a lot of women will say, it's like you're speaking directly to me, and you want to start a local group. You don't have to do it yourself. It normally takes about 8 people on a leadership team. 6 to 8 people is a good, strong team. That way you're just doing one tiny little piece of it, and they divide and conquer among their giftedness. Again, go on the website or just shoot an email to hello@forwardwomen.org, and we'll get you hooked up and, start that process. So that's the first thing I would say. The next thing I would say is the mentor program is amazing. And again, I've gotten to help promote it. Now I'm getting to be a part of it. And it's really amazing. I mean, even Mrs. Bush has been extremely complimentary of Diane and the program. And so I would say put August 29th down. It's the deadline for mentors and mentees to apply to Class 6. Okay, that will be in the fall. So between now and August 29th, get your application in, also on the website, to be a mentor or a mentee. So that is definitely number 2. The third thing I would watch for, and I need a drum roll, because we are about to launch a new website that will be mobile optimized. Obviously, my background's digital marketing. And so now over half of internet browsing in America is done on a mobile device.
Yes, it is.
And so we're going to have fantastic technology that is going to be really mobile friendly. Depending on the size screen you have is what experience you'll get. And so watch for that. With that, we are launching on top of the free services we have today. Everything we've talked about is free. Except for the book and the study guide. But now on top of that, you'll be able to become a paid member and become part of the Forward Leadership Program and receive special experiences. We have some amazing people supporting us, which I'll let Diane talk about. But whether it's through invitation-only webcasts or phone calls or events or, white papers that would cost $30,000 for your company to buy from a research company, but, we're able to share those. So I would encourage folks to come and become part of the new membership program. I would also encourage churches to encourage their women, because this, forward philosophy will help keep them and their families in church. And I would also encourage CEOs that are listening out there to come and partner with us in bringing, the Forward resources to their employees. And then I always like to mention that Today's Christian Woman is a great partner of ours.
Well, very sure.
Might have heard of Christianity Today, right? So Christianity Today is Today's Christian Woman. They have 3 platforms that are big pieces of content for them. And what we think of as sort of vocation and calling, or what they call life work, is all about women who work and who are believers. And so they have an amazing new section of the website that Forward and Diane are powering. And it's all about women in the workplace. And July 15th, we're going to roll out a bi-monthly newsletter that will be all Forward content. And we'll go to anyone who wants to go sign up for that for free. So you can go to Today's Christian Woman, look for Diane's picture right on the homepage.
There you go,
and go sign up for the Lifework newsletter. So I would say those are the things you should do today. And of course, I always like to say, go get the book and the study guide, because they're fantastic.
Diane, we just mentioned a minute ago, and Sandra mentioned the partners. You've had some pretty outstanding partners, haven't you, developed over the last couple of years here?
Well, we've been so blessed, and a lot of people say to me, how did you get this meeting with Carly Finorina? And if any of you don't know Carly, she was the first woman to be the CEO of a Fortune 20 company. But again, I just give all the glory to God, and He's opened doors, and people that feel very strongly about what we're doing have made connections for us. So Carly, Sandra and I met with the 1st of April in Washington, D.C., and she's really shared her story and her life, which is really been a transition over the last 4 years.
Well, sure. Ran for office, as many of our listeners in California know. Sure.
Right.
And survived breast cancer, and she'll tell you Hewlett Packard, of course.
Yeah,
she took
HP,
over. They were
yeah.
in the Fortune 50, and she took them to the Fortune 20. So
yeah,
amazing woman.
And she's gone through, a real spiritual growth over the last 4 years. Cheryl Batchelder, who is the CEO of Popeyes, she's actually supporting us with our local groups. So we really thank Cheryl for that. Charity Wallace, who is Mrs. Bush's senior advisor now of 14 years, is one of our advisory board members and has been one of our speakers and is very involved with us. Charlotte Jones Anderson, who is the daughter of Jerry Jones and Gene Jones, and Charlotte has just been fantastic. She really, she's just the epitome of one of the things I think we need to help women with is being self-assured and being assertive in a way that's very acceptable. And she's just amazing in that way. And we've also been blessed to partner with American Airlines, and American now came to us, and they have our book on their tablets and on their new planes that will be in the seat backs. So
the entertainment center. So, the little touch screen there. Isn't that amazing?
So we've just been, and that's Joanna Bruce is the one that reached out to us after she read the book and said, I want to do this. I'm now in charge of in-flight entertainment. So we've just had doors open that we could have never imagined.
Well, again, books and digital platform, mentor program, local groups, so many things that are available. So all you have to remember is the number 4 wordwomen.org, right?
Right.
And you, again, encourage people to join up, to maybe find a local group and join it, or to start a group. And even if there isn't a local group, Sandra, you've done a great job with this digital platform. So people anywhere in the world can connect up with you. And I'm looking forward to this new platform. Sounds
That's right.
pretty
You know how
exciting.
much I love international, so I'm ready to start local groups all over the world, Kerby.
Might as well. Well, it's just been great to have you both here. Certainly, Diane has been a good friend. She's been on the program many times before. Sandra, it's been great to bring you here. You also have one of your assistants. We should have brought her in studio so people could see her as well.
Well, and that's Avery, who actually was the driving force behind the study guide. Just phenomenal addition
Avery,
to our
well, thank
team.
you, even though nobody can see you on camera right now. So we certainly want to thank her. Thank you both for being here, and we look forward to the next time to get an update on what's happening. And Lord's blessing on both of you.
Thank you.
Kerby.
Thanks for having us, Kerby.
Let me just mention before we run out of time today, we've got a couple of resources. We've got some articles from our first hour, and certainly those are available to you. Second hour, certainly we've been talking about these issues. Don't forget that we have posted that one video. Of course, you can find many more on their website, but I would give all of you an assignment to watch it. It's only going to take you a few minutes, and then hit that share button. Somebody you know in your sphere of influence needs to know about this, and when you hit that share button, you can put it on your Facebook page or your blog, or you can send it by email to someone that you think might benefit from this, and that might be a contact that would be very helpful. So take that time as well. You have information about Work, Love, Pray. We've talked about that book for a few times today. So again, it is available. Practical wisdom for young professional Christian women and those who want to understand them, and now a study guide to go with it. So lots of great resources. And as you go to the website, you can find all sorts of ways to connect up with us. We have a button that says Get Involved. And if you don't receive my daily commentary, or you don't receive our show threads, which gives you all the links that we are talking about today in your inbox, that's a way in which you can get involved with us. And there's also, of course, a button that says Donate. Don't forget, we are listener supported, and if you can help us out financially to keep these programs on the air, we would greatly appreciate that as well. That's all we've been able to cover today, and so we hope you'll join us back here tomorrow. I want to thank Andrew and Catherine and Chris for their help behind the scenes. Have a great day, and we will see you back here tomorrow.
You have been listening to Point of View. For materials offered on the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries and is supported by your generous tax-deductible contributions.